Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be doing brakes inspection on this 2015 Nissan Armada. I will be checking my brake pads for remaining thickness and also checking around the brake system if there's any leakage or any braking lines or rupture hoses in that braking system in that area. So let's get into it. First, I will be setting my emergency brakes before I raise the vehicle, and then I'll be setting two blocks on the rear wheels just in case the emergency brakes fail, that the vehicle will not roll back off the jacks. And then I'm going to block the rear wheels just in case the emergency brakes fail, it doesn't roll off the jacks. So here I got one block here on the rear wheel, and there's one on the other side. Hey guys, now I have safety in place. I set the emergency brakes. I put, I blocked the rear wheels, and now I'm going to place the jack underneath the frame of the vehicle and then begin raising the vehicle up. Okay, now the jack is placed under the frame of the vehicle. Now I can begin raising the vehicle up so I can remove the front wheels. Okay, I raised the vehicle high enough where the front wheel is off the ground. Now I can place the jack stand underneath the vehicle here for safety. Gotta raise it just a little bit more. Okay, now I place the jack stand underneath the frame of the vehicle. I can now lower the vehicle down on the jack stand. Now I can remove the jack. Then I'm going to place the jack aft so I can remove the rear wheels. Now I can raise the vehicle a little higher so I can clear the rear wheel off the ground. Now the rear wheel cleared the ground. I can now place the jack stand underneath the rear end of the vehicle to support. Let me raise it a little higher. Now the rear wheel cleared the ground. So now I can place the jack stand underneath the vehicle to support the left side of the vehicle. So I can lower the vehicle down to support the rear end. Now the vehicle has raised. Now I can go ahead and remove the front and the rear wheel. Okay guys, be sure that you loosen up the lugs on the wheels before you raise the vehicle. I have already done that, so now it's easier for me to remove the lugs so I can remove the wheels. Now I'm going to remove the rear wheel. Okay guys, so now I remove the front wheels and I have access to the brake caliper. So I'm going to remove the brake caliper, then I can have access to the brake pads to do my inspection. So you're going to need a 17mm socket and a breaker bar to remove the bolts that attach the caliper to your knuckles right here. This is the two bolts, this one right here, and there's one right down here. Okay, this is the lower bolt. This one here is the upper bolt. So now I can remove the caliper. And move the caliper away from the knuckles. And then I have to tie it up because I don't want any stress on the brake hose here. Okay guys, when you remove the brake caliper, make sure that you support it and don't have it hangs on the brake hose here, because then it will cause extra stress and that can damage your brake hose here. And when pressure develops in here, it can break. So make sure that when you remove your caliper, you support it and don't put any stress on your brake hose. So now I remove my brake caliper, I have access to my brake pads. So now I can do the inspections on the brake caliper. I just slide it out, just like that. Slide the other one out, just like that. These are your brake pads here. You can see they are 50% worn. A full brake pad would be twice the thickness of this right here. So it would start from right here to right here. This would be the thickness of a new brakes. So you can see the brakes is 50% worn right here. So that's how you can tell that you have approximately 20,000 miles left on these brakes before they are to be replaced. Okay guys, this is your brake indicator right here. And this indicator here will touch your rotor whenever you apply your brakes. When the brakes is worn down to your indicator here, that's when you can tell that the brakes is totally gone. So whenever you apply your brakes and you hear the squeaky noise, this is what you hear in here. This solid device here is touching your rotation device right here, which is your rotor. So be aware of that. So these brakes are 50% worn. I know I can actually reinstall these brake pads and then move on to the rear brakes. So now I'm just going to slide these back into position. Here they are back into position. Now I can take the brake caliper slide it back. Then I can go ahead and reattach my bolts. Okay guys, so now I reattach my bolts back into my caliper. Now I can use my speed handle and my 17 mm socket and retorque in my bolts. Okay, and that's it for the front brakes inspection. Now I can move on to the rear. Okay guys, so now I'm on to the rear brakes inspection. So now I'm going to be removing the rear caliper and do the rear brakes inspection, check the brake pad to see the wearing and what percentage has remained. So let's get into it. So you're going to need a 10 mm socket and a breaker bar and a speed handle to speed up the process. Okay guys, this is the bolt, the upper bolt, and then there's one lower that attach the brakes caliper to this device right here. So I will have to break these bolts right here. And then there's one on the lower end here. Right here. This is the lower bolt for your rear caliper. And this is the upper bolt. This is the upper bolt. So now I can remove the caliper. Okay guys, so the rear caliper is a little bit different from the front caliper. In order to remove the rear caliper here guys, you have to compress this lip right here, this device, down, and then you slide this caliper here out. And this is how you remove your rear caliper. And now you can inspect your rear pads. So I can tell these pads here got a lot of life in it. These pads here only wear approximately 30%. See how thick? See how thick the pads are? Look how thick it is. And you can tell by the slot. See these slots right here? How deep these slots are? These slots is an indication to tell you that the brake pads got a lot of wear left in it. Look at the grooves, how deep the grooves are. And then another indication is your indicator right here. The indicator is so far behind opposed to the thickness of the pads. So you can tell these brakes got approximately 70% wear left in it. So these brakes are good. And while I'm here, guys, I can go ahead and do my inspection, make sure there's no leakage around your pistons here. This is your pistons. When you apply the brakes, the pressure travels from the master cylinder, which is up in the front, attached to your brake pedals, and pressure travel through the lines, to the rigid lines, then it comes to your flex line here to your caliper, and then the pressure develops inside your caliper and push these pistons here out. There are sometimes when the seals get worn, it give you a little seepage of leakage around here. That's good indication that your caliper has been breaking down. But this right here, I can tell there's no leakage around here, and I can check my lines, make sure there's no leakage along here. And also my brake rotor. Look how thick this rotor is. This is fairly brand new rotor, if you have to ask me, as far as thickness wise. This is very, very smooth surface right here. And I can tell the brake system is good because when I drive the vehicle and apply the brakes, I get no pulsation, just a smooth braking. So I know the brake system is very good on this vehicle. So now I see that my brake pads are approximately 70% of wear left in it. I can go ahead and reinstall my caliper. Okay guys, so now I finished my rear brakes inspection. My brake pads got approximately 70% of braking remains, so I can now reinstall my brake caliper. So first thing I'm going to be doing is to make sure that this slot right here fits into this square part right here of the knuckles. So we go ahead and slide it in there. And just slide it in. Now we slide it in, we can go ahead and reinstall my bolts. The upper bolts and the lower bolts. And use my speed handle and run the bolts down. And I can use my breaker bar and just tweak it just a little bit more. Now, if you want to get the specs, look into your owner's manual and find the specs on the torques on these bolts here. But for me, I can just use my breaker bar and just snug it down. That's good enough for me right there. Okay, now I finished my brakes inspection, the front and the rear. My brake pads on the rear is fairly new, approximately 70% rear remains, and the front brakes approximately 50% rear remains. So I know my brake system is good for approximately another 70,000 miles, I would say, on the rear, and the front is approximately 20,000 miles remain on the front. So that's my inspections completions on the front and the rear. I check all my hoses and all my lines. I check my brake calipers to make sure there's no leakage. I check the brake rotors, make sure there is no hot spots on there, and make sure that there's no cracks or warps. And everything on the rear ends here is in good shape. Now I can go ahead and reinstall my rear wheels. So let's get into that. First I'm going to be doing, before I install my wheel, guys, I'm going to pump my brakes to make sure that my brakes is attached to the rotors. And when you apply the brakes, I don't want any soft braking. So I'm going to go ahead and pump my brakes before I reinstall my wheels. One, two, three. Solid brakes right there. I know it's good, even though the vehicle is not running, because when the vehicle is running, you will have the booster actually assist your brakes and you have a much softer braking. But I can tell, even though it's solid, I can tell the braking is good shape. So now I can go ahead and reinstall my rear wheels. Okay, let's move on to the front and reinstall my front wheel. Okay guys, just one more thing here. Before I reinstall my wheel, I'm going to go ahead and check these hoses, make sure that there is no leaks on these hoses. Double check, make sure there's no leakage on these front brakes, flex hoses. Make sure that there is no cracks in these lines here. And like I double check the brake rotors here, make sure there's no hot spots on them. And there's no warps, like any bumpy feelings on these brakes, the brake rotor. And I have checked the dual caliper pistons to make sure that there was no leakage there. So I know the the brake system here is good. There is no failure or no indications of failure of leakage around the brake system here. So now everything is all inspected and checked out good. I can now go ahead and reinstall my wheels. Okay, now I'm going to lower the vehicle down where the wheel just barely touched the ground, and I can go ahead and finally torque the lugs on these wheels. Now guys, I have to point this out. If you want to get the specifications on the torques for the bolts on the caliper, look in your owner's manuals and you'll get the specifications on that. So just to point that out if you really question about the torques. So now I got the front and rear wheels on. I'm going to raise the vehicle, remove the jack stands and lower it down just enough where the wheels touch the ground, and finally torqued the lugs on the wheels. Ground and finally torqued the lugs on the wheels. Okay guys, that's the end of the brakes inspections on the left side, the front and rear. On the right side I will be doing another day, but the process is going to be the same. So that's the end of the program on this process here. So if you like this video and find it useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you again. Appreciate it. Goodbye.